Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
Greetings, and thank you for joining me, Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Listen live at iHeartRadio, Odyssey, TuneIn app, smart speakers, and especially on our WHPC app where you can hear all of our programming. Herbally Yours brings you the latest information about the many facets in the world of natural living. And today I'm so happy to bring on board Christine Keller, who is the founder and executive director of Sangha Education Center, which we will be talking about today. She is also an adjunct college professor at SUNY College at Old Westbury, where she teaches history and philosophy. And also, in addition to offering heart-centered learning, which is inspired by nature, she also serves as a guest lecturer and conference presenter at Long Island colleges, schools, and community organizations, educating and advocating on behalf of our children right here on Long Island. So thank you so much for joining us today.
You're quite welcome, Ellen.
Now, I'd like to share with our listeners how we originally met, because I think the first time we met, I was doing an herbal identification walk in Old Bethpage Farm, which we do yearly. If anybody wants to find out about that, they can go to naturalnurse.com, and we'll be having many come up as the season progresses and it's warm weather. And I believe that you brought a group of your students on one of the walks.
Yes, it was one of your medicinal herb walks at Restoration Farm in Old Bethpage. I've been a member of Restoration Farm since 2007 or 2008. My children personally benefited from the experiences that they had there, and I was so excited to see that you were doing the medicinal herb walk. So I wound up bringing our Project Stewardship group. Project Stewardship is a program that we run twice a month, one workshop and one outing to a community partner setting. And a lot of our programming is nature-based, and many of our young people are interested in the natural world that we live within and that we are part of. So I did bring a group of young people who were very interested in what you had to offer that day.
So let's talk about this entire organization that you run, which is Sangha Heart-Centered Learning Center. What is it about and who is it for?
Well, I started Sangha originally as the Children's Sangha back in 2005 on behalf of young people similar to my son, who is now 24 years old, who have a range of different abilities and needs. So many of the young people have ADHD, OCD, anxiety, Asperger's, autism, a range of different what people refer to as disabilities. In our world, we really say the fact that, or highlight the fact that we all have different abilities and needs. The young people who I work with are very high ability, so they're kids who are college and career bound. They have many, many interests and skills, but they also are lagging skills that we help them to develop. So that's the general population in terms of young people who we serve, starting back in 2005. But fast forward to today, we have become a nonprofit organization, Sangha Education Center, in 2019. And we're lucky to be located on the beautiful Jericho Preserve, where we are in a historic house called Malcolm House, and we have access to this 22-acre preserve where we're able to embark on farming and nature-based activities in addition to others.
That is so fantastic, and we should really talk about doing an herb walk right there at your center in Jericho.
Yes.
So we'll talk about that another time, but it's so amazing there. When you drive over there, and if anybody's listening locally to our station here at WHPC, it's right off 106, but a lot of people have never been there because it's such a little hidden gem.
Very true. And the interesting thing, we've always had a program, Long Island History in Your Own Backyard, and we were intending to expand it. And then it worked out so well being able to move to this Nassau County property because of its rich history. So it actually, Quakers built and owned the home for years and were involved in basically the Underground Railroad on Long Island and abolition from the 17 through the 1900s.
And if anybody wants to find this place, what you do, I think the easiest place to go to is Jericho Cider Mill as like a really easy place to find. And then if you can find Jericho Cider Mill, which is right on 106, 107 before it splits or somewhere near there, then you actually have to turn. What's that little road that you turn on really just south of Jericho Cider Mill?
Yes, it's directly on Old Jericho Turnpike. The address is 5 Old Jericho Turnpike. When you turn down that road, it's the first house on the left, a big white house.
So if somebody, puts in nowadays, we have Google, they certainly didn't when they built this house, Google Maps or something. Does 5 Old Jericho Turnpike actually turn up?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. I always find it by going to Jericho's cider mill and then going to the first street south that I can turn on. And then it's this little strip where they actually have a graveyard still, right? And the old Friends Meeting House. Yes.
Elias Hicks, who was one of the main initiators of the abolition movement within the Quaker community, his home is there. And then that's to the right-hand side. Then to the left, as you say, the original Quaker meeting house is there with the cemetery where Elias Hicks and others are buried.
And then you have use of this beautiful old, like the farm, but also the farmhouse.
Yeah, so originally it was a farm and a farmhouse, but the area, the wooded sections have obviously taken over the meadows that were there, except for this one section between us and the Jericho Cider Mill that we were approved to be able to farm.
Wow. So how do you do that?
Farm.
Are you bringing in people to work the land, or are the children and young adults involved in the community actually doing it?
Yeah, it's really a community effort, like everything that Sangha does. We welcome everyone to participate with us. The area, the farm space, which we call the Meadow Farm, is a nice sized plot of land. We're not farming the whole thing. We're taking one step at a time because farming, as you know, is a pretty large endeavor. So initially we're focusing on it as an educational farm, and we created a medicine wheel garden at its center. So it is based on Native American culture. It is a circular structure that has 4 sections for each season, north, south, and represents north, south, east, and west. And certain plantings are there during each season, spring, summer, winter, and fall. So last season was our first season truly cultivating that space, since it took time for us to actually design and create it and create the bed border and everything that we did the year before. So we planted crops in the summer and the fall section in 2022. And this year we will begin with the spring section. So we do have one farmer who's been working with us, Regina, who you probably know from Restoration elsewhere, who is also a librarian and is a restaurant owner. Her and her husband own Blind Bat Brewery in Centerport.
They have nothing to do except volunteer
exactly.
time. Oh my God.
Well, this is what it is, Ellen. So many wonderful people come our way. And it's not that they are volunteering because they don't have something else to do. It's that they volunteer because they also understand the purpose of heart-centered learning. A lot of the young people in our programs, despite their high ability level, have had their levels of struggle because of the other aspects of who they are. So in early childhood, especially, my son, who has ADHD, had difficulty in the school setting, even though he had, again, high ability. Many of his teachers realized, this boy is very bright and capable, but he struggles to sit in his seat. He struggles to do this. So eventually I learned the term twice exceptional. Twice exceptional was a term coined by parents about 30 years ago, which means gifted, but with some level of disability. So many of the young people in our programs fit that bill, or I refer to my son as borderline twice exceptional. So he's definitely high ability, but not necessarily gifted in one particular area or more. So
so many children have that challenge.
Yes,
true.
Yes. But we really have to start appreciating everyone for who they are and how they learn. And that's really what we do at Sangha, and was the original purpose of heart-centered learning. Because so many of our young people have experienced, trauma and bullying and a variety of things, despite the fact that, of course, there are wonderful teachers out there doing wonderful things. So when I mentioned they're having challenges in school, it's not to say that there aren't some great people out there who've tried to make a difference in the lives of our kids. But on the other hand, not everyone truly understands what it means to experience some of the things that our children do. For example, dysgraphia. My son has dyslexia and dysgraphia as well. Graphia is a writing disability that most people, even within the schools, haven't heard of. They might have heard of dyslexia, which is a reading disability. I spent a lot of time advocating for my son in the school system. And once I started Sangha, the purpose of which was enrichment programs for children at the time, back in 2005, to be able to provide them with the engagement and the heart-centered atmosphere that would boost them and enable them to flourish. I also advocated within the school to educate people about the tools they could be using to better serve our students.
So I think that's fabulous, because you can really see the difference. And then I guess there's some kind of stratification in terms of who would be perfect for Sangha, because my grandson, who has intellectual disabilities as well as a long list of those other kinds of autism, etc., but he's in Eastern Suffolk BOCES program. Mm-hmm. And I want to shout that out because of the fabulous, fabulous interventions that he gets, both in school and at home. But I had to really fight for that. It takes sort of hours every single week to keep those programs going and to keep in touch with everybody. But at least it's available.
Yes. Yes. And I'm also very grateful to be sharing the space with two other nonprofits, Karen's Hope and Emotions Matter. Karen works on behalf of young people similar to her son, Ryan, who is on the autism spectrum and is nonverbal or limited language. And similar, the young people in her program don't have to be nonverbal, but they are similar to her son. And then we also have Paula, who runs Emotions Matter, and she works on behalf of young people and adults who have borderline personality disorder and some of the more challenging anxiety disorders.
Wow. See, this is why I do radio all these years, because I'm going to definitely get in touch with Karen's Hope about some programs that might be appropriate for my grandson. Because, yes, he's not exactly nonverbal. I mean, he has words, but it's not like you can have it, ongoing back and forth. That's what we're working on now. So exactly. That is excellent information. Yeah. What do you mean by heart-centered?
So heart-centered came about because of the need for understanding the whole child. So that's a phrase that's used in education, the whole learner or the whole child, that it's not just about the cognitive academic piece, but that we're all human beings and we need to also cultivate compassion and understand the social emotional aspect of the person, and that how that's involved in not only in learning, but in life. So we need to step back sometimes. And when you're kind of judging or misunderstanding why a student is having difficulty, it's important to realize they are a human being and they need to be treated kindly, with compassion, with love. So a lot of the times you'll hear stories from our young people that, they really didn't feel like they fit in. They didn't feel like they were understood. They didn't feel like they were accepted. And so heart-centered is the focus of what we do, because we love our kids, all the kids and all the people who come to Sangha, and feel like everyone should be treated with compassion.
Well, that's a beautiful thought. And I'd like to remind our listeners, you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Listen live or online at nccradio.org or iHeartRadio or other venues. And for more information on today's guest or topic, you can email us at whpc@ncc.edu. And our guest today is Christine Keller. She is the Executive Director of Sangha Education Center, as well as being an adjunct professor at SUNY Old Westbury. And a good place to find out more about today's topic, perhaps you have someone who might be interested in joining some of these excellent programs is sanghacenter.org. That's SANGHA Center, CENTER.org. And don't write that down while you're driving. Just visit our archives where we have so many wonderful shows right here at WHPC. And then we'll have a live link to sanghacenter.org. And, Christine, is there any other information about how people can best find you and these great programs?
Sure. We have a phone number, of course, 516-870-3999. And we are on Facebook and Instagram. So sanghacenter.org. You can locate on both of those social media platforms.
Well, it's fabulous to see. I know when we had our class with people that you brought, they knew a lot about nature already. And I think it's interesting that you have a nature center in terms of, a focus of your program. What made you choose that?
It really also started with, I do have a son and a daughter. Both of them were involved at Restoration Farm when they were children. And since then, we embarked on many nature-based outings to different preserves and parks and centers on Long Island, many of which people may not be aware of. There are so many wonderful nature-based sites, let's just say, on Long Island that are just awe-inspiring. And so my children benefited so much. I knew I needed to offer programming to reconnect children to nature. So that was one aspect of what we do: nature, history, whole child learning, and social action. Those are really the four components of Sangha. And we offer also nature and wellness connections programs now that we have the nonprofit at Malcolm House to adults and to families with small children. So everyone's welcome to participate with us. We offer two types of programs: forest bathing, which is once a month, typically in spring and fall.
Wait. Let me say that again. It's forest bathing?
Yes, forest bathing.
Do we take our clothes off to do that? Out in the woods there?
Sometimes it can be misleading, right? People automatically think bathing, right? But it's bathing in nature. So it's a way for you to re-immerse yourself in nature, especially if it's not something you do all the time. But even if it is, I have a wonderful nature therapy guide named Stephanie Gaglione. She has gone for nature guide training in Colorado, and she guides people on our premises through different invitations to connect with nature. So we start off in a circle with a small meditation, and then she gives you about 10 minutes, 15 minutes to follow through on an invitation that she offers. It could be something as simple as finding a texture in nature. So you go out and you explore. One that our young people love during the summer, we also have a summer program, Summer at the Sangha, for young people ages 13 and up. And she comes to us twice a month in July. And one thing they really enjoyed was finding nature scents. So she had them make a nature scent or cologne or perfume. She gave them a little cup, and they would go out and they would gather certain things. They would have to smell it. And so you're using all of your senses to create something. And they had to actually package it and give it a name. So they really had to get to know those scents and those aspects of nature fully to be able to actually explain it to someone else.
Wow, that's a beautiful idea. Of course, as you move forward with your Sangha Center, it would be great to purposefully plant, let's say, aromatic plants that will feed into that kind of workshop in the future. And hopefully, everybody's also taught about, let's say, some of the dangers of being in nature, like poison ivy and ticks.
Yes, and we do have those. Poison ivy is on the perimeter of, some of the property. And luckily, we've only had it over this 2.5 year period. We've had 2 ticks that we've noticed on people, but we notice it because we pay attention.
Right, and not too bad with the tick. So that's why in every group, I would say teaching what not to pick, like the poison ivy, would be a good thing to point out. But Absolutely. Other than that, there's so many, like you talk about texture, you think about like the bark on trees. It varies so much. In fact, with people who identify plants, that would be one of the first things they would look at. But most people just think it's just a tree. They're all the same.
No, very different. Yeah, we've done many workshops about trees and about, of other particular plantings in our environment. So it's been wonderful. We've had Francis Reddy come, who's an arborist, who did something with us on the premises to identify trees. And it aligned with our mentoring program where Jackson, who's the young man who you met at Restoration, he had his phone and he was identifying the plants that you were pointing out to learn more about them.
Yeah, there's some really great apps. That's true. Yeah. That help with that. Mm-hmm. So, being so well versed in many things in terms of teaching abilities, and you being a college professor, in fact, what is the collaborative and proactive solutions approach? What does that mean?
The collaborative and proactive solutions approach truly changed my family's life personally back in 2005, approximately, also around the time when I was starting Sangha. It's an approach that was developed by Dr. Ross Greene. His first book title is misleading, and he says to this day he would change it if he could go back in time. It's called The Explosive Child. Initially, I did not read the book because of the title, as my son was not explosive. Then at one point, someone said to me, you really should read this book. It's a life changer. And when I did, that was it. It completely altered the course of our life. And I knew I had to help this approach get out there to other parents. So he has a website, livesinthebalance.org. And his approach is children do well if they can. If they can't, then something's getting in the way. And it's our job to help them determine what is getting in the way and how to solve problems together. So even though that may sound like common sense, it's definitely a different approach to parenting than many people are used to. And there's a whole method behind it. And I can just say that it works miraculously, in my opinion. So we've used it to help families over the course of time, as well as professionals.
Wow. That's, just your constant learning and bringing more and more really high-end, excellent information from your own knowledge, but also, like you say, to the groups that you work with. How do parents, I guess you're talking about children, the ones that you brought on my walk were not little kids. They were more, I would say, in the teenage category.
Exactly. When I started the nonprofit, or actually say that really, going back, I started with children in 2005, but then as my children got older, I kind of shifted to young adults. And so right now our programs are for young people ages 13 and up. So in our project stewardship program, as well as in our civic mentoring program, young people are typically between, I'd say, 15 and 35. So to me, 35 is young at this point in time in my life, since I'm 58.
Wow,
but
what an ongoing change that is, right? Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
Yes. But most are really between 15 and 25, I would say, average.
15 and 25. So there's no cutoff like at 21.
No, not at all.
And then you said you have programs for adults as well.
Exactly. So we have nature and wellness connections for adults, the community support group, educational consulting and training. So we offer different types of training on tools that can help families and parents and educators, as well as clinicians.
So what are some of those programs about?
Nature and Wellness Connections and Long Island History in Your Own Backyard are two that we are announcing more so because we not only offer them to community members, but also to community groups, as well as to schools. So it can be any age range for those. And we've had a lot of adults express interest in both of those, Nature and Wellness Connections, which would be the forest bathing, as well as our learn and grow sessions, where we do hands-on work in the garden. But it's not just gardening. It is a lot more to it than that. Sometimes people don't want to get their hands dirty, or they might, have an aversion because they're not used to doing activities that are hands-on nature-based. So we provide a range of different experiences within that umbrella of learn and grow. And then our history programs right now, there will be 4 modules based on the history of the Jericho Preserve, but we also offer other history-related programs.
Oh, about the preserve that you're actually at.
Yes. So we have 4 modules. The first is about Long Island Quakers. The second is about the Underground Railroad on Long Island. The third is about historic Malcolm House. And the fourth is about women in abolition.
So these programs are something like a slideshow that you present and it's at your location, or you could bring it to other libraries and things like that, I imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have the 4 modules take place at our location. Everything we do has a hands-on aspect because we feel that experiential learning is most effective. So each module would have a short presentation, a walking tour piece, and then an activity, a hands-on activity. And then we also have shorter presentations that we can do for libraries and others to give them more information about our programs and specifically related to the history of the Jericho Preserve.
So that's just wonderful. And I imagine you could take some of those programs around, let's say, to other libraries and locations like that if people have other groups.
Absolutely.
Which could also be a source of revenue, I would say, for your organization. Because, the libraries often will pay for presentations.
Yeah.
They sound like really wonderful presentations that are so interesting for our local community as well as for these people that you serve. And you're not using the word special needs.
Right. We basically highlight the fact that we all have different abilities and needs. So you don't have to have a classified or diagnosed disability to have a level of challenge. Right? I grew up without any diagnosis. I did very well in school, but I know after having my children, especially, that I definitely have ADHD, but the label to me doesn't necessarily, have as much impact as it does on children today, on having the need for that diagnosis. And then also, I struggled with math growing up. Many people have. So the classifications and the labels help us when our kids are younger to be able to get services within the school system. But people may or may not have a classification or diagnosis, right? Many people have anxiety. And today, the rise in anxiety is a huge reason why Sangha is so important, because people need a place where they can go that is warm and welcoming, where they can come into themselves and learn and grow together.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for being our guest today. And you have been listening to Christine Keller, and she is the person who does Sangha, SANGHA, sangacenter.org. And thank you, listeners, for tuning into Herbally Yours, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamai at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.